Good evening, denizens of the internet. In this video, I'm going to go through a three-part tutorial on how to bring in realistic human models into Unity and then animate them. This is useful for especially games like Telltale or plot-driven games. I'm actually working on a game right now which is a bit of a spy thriller, so it's got some elements of film noir, so it's important to be able to bring that kind of level of realism and the aesthetic that I'm looking for. One really useful software for this is Daz3D. So at the end of this video, we're going to create a Daz3D character and get it ready for export into Unity. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to properly import it into Unity, which is a pretty fast process, and then I'm going to show you how to animate it, because there's a couple of videos out there that shows how to do elements of this, but there doesn't seem to be a comprehensive tutorial. So let's get started. First off, you're going to need Daz3D software. Very simple. Go to Daz3D.com. There's a free download. It's a very useful software. First off, as it quotes, realistic human figures, has some free modeling software, very large content library, which has everything from props to costumes, different hair, which is one of the most challenging things to bring into a game. And finally, it can export to FBX, which is really useful for Unity. So, once you've downloaded, feel free to open it up. Now, I have bought a whole bunch of products already. I use this in my work, so it's something I have a bunch of. But generally what you're going to want to do is figure out, okay, first off, am I looking to be importing a man or a woman into the scene? And second off, what kind of hair? That's one of the most challenging questions. And what kind of wardrobe am I looking for? You want to make sure that the wardrobe that you pick, so for example, the Grantham Hall suit, what type of character, what type of figure does it go with? For right now, we're going to be looking for the Grantham Hall suit with Genesis 2. We're going to bring in an extra, and I'll include all of this in the project description, these links, but we're going to do Michael 6, and we're going to look for what kind of products. The character that I'm making in this video his name is Alfonso. He's a bit of an older spy who's been around the block, so we're going to try and age him up a little bit while keeping him distinguished rather than frail looking. So first things first, we need to give an appropriate wardrobe. Now he's part of the Spanish aristocracy, so we're going to look for something a little bit more grandiose. As a quick side note, you can see right now, if you could get this level of detail in Unity, this is pretty good for most amateur products. Pretty good detail on the skin, natural looking eyes. The hair is always a challenge, and that's something I'll talk about in a little bit. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in the Grantham jacket, Grantham pants, Grantham shoes, Grantham waistcoat. A couple things I want to touch on right away. So first off, you notice that it looks a little bit like he's wearing vinyl or plastic or something like that. So even though the shaping is quite good, the surfaces are a little bit too reflective. So anytime you're working with Daz3D, you want to probably get familiar with the whole setup. It's not complicated, but it does have a lot of different tabs. Really quickly, if you want to install new products or products that you've already bought, you click on the Install tab. Smart Content allows you to travel through, okay, I'm looking at Michael 6. What kind of wardrobe is available for him? If I bring in a different character, so if I brought in, for example, Genesis 3, it would show me a wardrobe associated with Genesis 3. If you want to look at your entire content library from A to Z, you can see everything that exists alphabetized. So for example, Agent Hair over here maybe doesn't go with Michael 6, but it's something that would go with, Genesis 3 or Genesis 8, male or female. And that's for all the products you have. You also have a couple of different more advanced settings, which I don't think we need to get into in this video. For right now, we're going to keep in smart content, and this allows us to basically pick outfits that were specifically made for Genesis 2 male, or Michael 6 in this case. Now over here, this gives you basically the aux viewport, the camera. This tells you what is in the scene and what is attached to what. So you can see right now, by clicking on hip, pelvis, left thigh, right thigh, these basically tell you the different bones that's associated with this character. This is going to tell you the outfits that's currently attached to our figure, Michael 6. Okay, so parameters. This is when it starts getting kind of interesting, and this is one of the advantages of Daz3D. You can change a lot of different things about Michael 6. For example, you can increase his muscularity, you can make him skinnier, you can change his body around. So there's a lot of different advantages here. But you can also change, for example, his face. You have to be a little bit careful. Make sure you're clicking inside the search. So you can change pretty dynamically a lot of different things about the face. And you got to be a little bit careful to make sure, for example, that you don't have something going out of proportion like this. It's fairly involved, and you can decide how deeply involved you want to get with this. Most of the time, there's a lot of good presets that keep people relatively varied without having to get too deep into it. So that's probably what we're going to go with. Moving on, you can affect different aspects of clothing, especially hats, for example. Most of the time, though, really what you're worried about is the actual physical appearance of the character. Shaping, again, same thing. We're looking basically at changing the physical appearance of the person. Posing, exactly what it sounds like. You can actually control the person's arm movement, leg movement. We're going to keep them in a T-pose because that's the most useful thing for bringing it into Unity. Surfaces. So this is really what we're talking about over here. So right now, we can, for example, change eye color, change skin tone, by changing the surfaces over here. Clicking on Michael 6, you can see skin, for example. If you click on surfaces, and then if you click skin over here, it's probably what you're looking for. Cornea. We can change the color of the cornea by browsing different images. You can figure out which one you want, and generally, this is a little bit of my art collection. For, in fact, the Spanish game that I was looking at, we're trying to bring in some classiness into one of the bars that we have in the game. A quick digression. So, moving on. Lovely. We're going to just Control-Z that. Moving on. So, basically, long story short, what you can do is you can change the ambient color. So, for example, you could change this to a bit more reddish. Not ambient color. Diffuse color. I believe it's diffuse color. Let's find out. Yeah, so this will change the coloration of the skin. Obviously, if you want something a little bit darker, you bring it down like this over here. So that keeps it a little bit darker. We're not going to do that for this one. But we are going to need this in a little bit, and we are going to need this in a little bit. So keep that idea in place. So the long story short is that you can affect a lot of different aspects, both of the physical characteristics, the literal mesh, and you can also affect the surfaces inside Daz3D. For right now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the pre-built materials specifically for the Grantham jacket. So what materials do you have? Well, we got the jacket. For the pants, we have the pants. For the shoes, we have the shoes. For the waistcoat, we have the waistcoat. Now, this is already looking 1,000 times better, but it's still a little bit too shiny in my opinion, especially far away. And it also has this kind of rough pattern where it looks like it's not quite detailed enough. I think that the fabric itself doesn't look particularly comfortable and fabricy. We're thinking this guy is going to have a very classy silk suit, something along those lines. Maybe not silk, but something that doesn't look like he's wearing carpet. So as a quick example of how you'd affect the surfaces, let's go over to the Grantham jacket over in Scene. Let's look at specifically, not the buttons, collar, jacket, lining, thread, I suppose, and we're going to just bring all of these guys down a little bit. So we're going to decide on some value, and that's already looking a little bit better in my opinion. We're also going to reduce the glossiness, I think. Yeah, so something along, we're going to set a standard, we're going to say 20% glossiness. Something like that, nice and simple. And actually I'm going to bring that even farther down. Okay, so we're looking at 114, 114, 114. Specular color, that's basically what does the reflection look like. So for example, if I make it blue, it'll reflect blue now. We want to keep it reflecting white. Okay, so 114, 114, 114. I don't know, what do you guys think? Maybe we bring it a little bit darker. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so now we're going to go to the actual jacket. We're going to go to, going to go to 91, 91, 91. So we can actually type in 91, 91, 91, and since this is the same fabric, generally you want this to have the same diffuse color. And we're going to bring this glossiness to, again, 20%. 20%. There we go, something like that. So now it looks a little bit less like plastic, which is nice. And again, you play around however you want to change this around, feel free. Okay, I don't think we really need to go into the lining, the pocket, any of that kind of stuff. Let's move on to the pants, just make sure it's following the same procedure here. Diffuse color is going to, again, be 91, 91, and 91. Okay, and glossiness, we're going to bring that down to 20%. Okay, so now hopefully all of the, and you can see that is already pretty glossy actually, those pants. We might want to bring that glossiness down even a little bit more, just because that's a bit much. Let's bring that down to 15%. Yeah, that looks a little bit more normal. And we're going to have to bring that down a little bit then. So let's bring this down to something like 80, 80, 80. Yeah, so that's a little bit darker now. And again, you can play around with this however you like. I'm thinking that this guy is going to have relatively shiny clothing, you know, nice fitting, stylish. He's a spy after all. Shoes, I don't think we need to change too much. Waistcoat, let's just keep that same convention of 91, 91, 91, and let's keep that glossiness again at like about 20%. Something like that. Yeah, looks a little bit more realistic that way. Now, a quick point here. The shirt obviously is going to be different. If you wanted to change the whole color, you can see that changing this, for example, to black over here, it's going to make everything black, and you don't actually want that. That's why you have to go in and specifically check the shirt. And let's see, we're going to make it much less glossy. Let's see what happens when we bring this down. Yeah, see how it improves the sheen, or I should say the quality of the shirt. It looks a little bit less dirty, or looks a little bit whiter, I guess is what we're really trying to say. And I think that's fine. Let's go ahead and move on to that collar, and again, bring that glossiness way down. Yeah, what do we have for shirt? We have glossiness 16%. Let's make this like 10% glossy. And let's make the same thing with the collar, 10%. 10%. Nice. I think we're going to change the color of the tie. I don't know what kind of color you guys want, but I would be interested in something, maybe a bright, passionate red, something like that. We can do better than that. Maybe something over here. Nope, we need something a little bit more intense. See, that I like right there. You can still see the pattern, and if, for example, here, actually, for the tie, we do want the tie to shine, so we're going to bring that glossiness to like 30%, maybe 28%, something like that. Now, if you bring this too dark, it's a little bit more difficult to see the pattern, so we're going to keep it a bit brighter. Maybe we want to have something, deep red like that, but a little bit lighter, just so that we can really emphasize that pattern. Okay, but I think that's generally good. All right, so now we come to the most difficult part of all, which is the hair. The hair is going to give you guys a lot of trouble when you first start out with this, when you're still making your production line for characters. I would recommend, I've looked around a lot of different, if you're looking for sort of what I'm looking for, which is more business type hair look, I would look at Boris hair and Brian hair. Boris hair is really useful for texturing later in Unity. It works out really well. And Brian hair, especially when it's black, comes out pretty nicely. They all look great when you're going to buy them, but there are a lot of problems later down the line. For this one, we're going to go with Brian hair. We're going to check what materials we have for this guy. So there's a bunch of different hair colors, and you can see already they did a really good job with the camera angle over here in this particular picture. When you look at it straight on, it doesn't even look as good as it does in the photo, but what else is new? He's Spanish, so we're going to give him, we're going to go to Brian here. We're going to give him black hair. I think that looks a little bit better. We're going to look at actually shaping over here. You can make a lot of adjustments, and this is one of those things I didn't necessarily know when I first started out, so this has been something that's been kind of useful to me. Let's go to just general Brian hair. So bangs down, for example, probably we don't want to look Spider-Man 3-like, look kind of the opposite of that, so we're going to bring them way back. Curl back forward, that's basically got a little curl right here that's moving back and forth. Forehead curl, we can change how much of that we want. I think we're going to have a well slicked back hair kind of guy. Less volume, definitely. I think that's a little bit too poofy for what I'm looking for. Messy, not so much. And then there's some, if you happen to have the Eldritch Seeker hat, or the hats assuming Navy hat along with this, or Surf's Up hat, then these are useful, but right now, no. I think that's good for what we want right now. Let's go ahead and check out how we're going to actually change the body and the face of this character. So we're going to click on Michael 6, and we're going to go to shaping, first Michael 6. So I'm thinking what I want for this particular spy is for him to be a little bit skinnier, a little bit older, been doing this for a while. And so we're going to turn down the male muscular, obviously, reduce his size. Let's turn down that Michael 6 body a little bit. If you turn it all the way up, basically just makes him a little bit more muscular, a little bit bulkier. Same thing with bodybuilder, portly. We don't want to go so far as to say emaciated. I think that's too much. Maybe we'll just have a touch of that. But I think generally speaking, yeah, skinny guy in a well dressed in a suit. That's really what we're looking for. So now we're going to move on to actually the face. So there are a lot of things that you can affect about a Daz3D character's face, and to be honest, some of them will not come across in Unity. So you have to exaggerate a little bit. What we're going to do this time is we're going to actually base this face off of a real-life spy, thought that would be fun. So this is Edmundo Lasalle. He shows up in a couple of places and worked for the OSS. He's actually from Mexico, but worked in Spain to help secure the D-Day landings. There was a lot of spy activity in Spain. That's part of what the game that I'm working on is about. But for our purposes right now, we're going to basically be trying to get our character looking similar to this portrait over here. So let's go ahead and make ourselves comfortable and get a nice view of our character over here. I think that's about right. We could even change it so that it's about the same view. I think that would probably be okay. Let's move this over a little bit. Oh, we can't. Exciting. Okay. So just make sure that the camera angle is about the same. Something a little bit like that. Okay. So point by point. I would say his forehead is a little bit larger and his eyebrows go up a little bit. So let's see what we have for forehead. Forehead defined, forehead flat, forehead round, forehead wrinkle. Well, he's going to be a little bit older, so we're going to give him some forehead wrinkle. It doesn't seem to show up much, but that's okay. So let's see what else we can change. It may be that it's the brow. Brow defined, brow left, brow depth. Maybe we're talking about brow depth? No, definitely not looking for that. Brow width. No, probably not looking for that either. Although I will say, actually, it might be a little bit wider, something like that. We got kind of lucky in that I would say that the jawline, the chin is actually already quite similar, as is the nose for that matter. The mouth is a little bit too large, but let's focus on these brows for right now. So if we're going to actually just look at everything that's available for his face, his cheekbones, I would say they come out a little bit too much. So let's look, just going down the list over here. Temples, is that useful? No, I would say where we were before is probably about right. You don't want to adjust things too much because the character will come out looking crazy at the end. But cheekbone size, so obviously that's way too much. That's too little. But I will say I think he had a little bit less than what we originally had. So I'm going to say something along those lines. Let's see. We also have cheeks define, cheek depth. I honestly can't tell the difference between those two, but there you are. Cheeks dimple. You can see right over here, it changes a little bit. Again, this is for people who want a particularly detailed look. Okay. No chin cleft over here, so we don't really have to worry about that. Chin depth, chin width, again, I would say they're all about the same. Jaw curve, maybe a little bit less curved. Maybe a little bit more defined. He's got a very square jaw, this guy over here. Jaw size. We're looking something Family Guy size over there. I think we want something a little bit larger. Yeah, something along those lines. Trying to match up this with this over here. A little bit less. Something like that. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Face heart. Again, I don't think that's going to change much. We're looking for probably about where we were. Face round, face square, face young. Probably want to get rid of that face young. Face young all the way over here. Give us a little bit more pixie-like features. So we're going to bring that down a little bit. And we're going to have to reduce the jaw size because of that, for sure. So jaw depth, jaw size. Yeah, something along those lines. There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's see what else we've got here. Face base, face details, face base, face details, center brow folds. Yeah, so again, looking for someone a little bit older. See if we can get any of that kind of stuff over here. I guess that's, when it says brow, it means more over this. We're looking for this region over here. Forehead fold, is that going to give us anything? Nope, nothing. Ear age. You know, to be honest, I don't care too much about ear age. I don't think it's going to show up in Unity. Eye size is something that would show up for sure. Yeah, generally speaking, you want to have about that eye size. I think anything smaller than that can affect how people are going to interact with that. Let's move this along a little bit, increase face age a little bit. You can see that it hollows the cheeks a little bit, so let's bring that to something like over here, something like that. I do want to thin out the lips a little bit. Something along those lines. You can see that a little difficult to see in the picture, but I would say that his lips are a little bit thinner over here. And that's probably fine. Okay, so the big thing is, can we move these eyebrows up? Now, I'm doing this in real time, so I hope that you guys aren't getting bored by this, but let me see over here. Eyes. Crow's feet, sure. Let's give him some crow's feet. Eyelash length. Well, he is Spanish, so we're going to increase that. Maybe something like that over here. Interesting. So that gives him a little bit of a curious look, but probably not what we're looking for over here. Actually, what we might do is, if we can't raise up the eyebrows, maybe we can lower the eye height. Eye height. So if we bring them down, it's going to give him a similar look to actually having a larger forehead and having those eyebrows raised a little bit. So we're going to bring that way down. And hopefully that gives us a little bit closer to what we're looking for. Whatever the case is, the important thing is that the character in general looks a little bit different than the actual Daz3D preset. I would say it's distinctly different, which is really what we're talking about over here. So without further ado, what I've shown you guys today here is how to download Daz3D, how to add a character in, how to clothe that character, how to change pretty much everything about the clothing, the character, their surfaces, the meshes themselves, the posing. And as a quick side point, I will say one of the actually useful poses here is if you want to give them emotions, that is something that you can do. But that's something that we can cover in a future video, but in more detail. But for example, if we want to make him frowning over here like this, we can do that. What I would say is, to get that same look of nonchalance that you have over here, the raised eyebrow, that's something that we can pose out. So while I'm here, let's raise those eyebrows with a little bit of shock. And let's give him something a little bit more, or surprise, we could do that, but no, don't open up the mouth. Let's bring that shock down a little bit. Something like that right there. And we're going to give him a little bit of a flirtatious look, I think. Some kind of smile over here. Yeah, here we go. A little bit of smile over here. Something like that. Nothing too much. Coming out a little bit too genuine. Alright. So the next video, I'm going to cover how to properly import this into Unity. So to do that properly, we're going to have to export it properly. So as a quick preview, what's going to happen is you're basically going to export whatever character you've got into your Daz3D files, so into the Alfonso files, and you're going to have your FBX, and you're going to have your images. But we'll cover that next week. Anyways, thanks very much for checking this out. This is a little bit of a longer tutorial than I was planning, but that is, I'm sure, what everyone says. Please do like and subscribe to our channel.